Signature drinks are probably one of the most divisive things in the coffee industry right now.
We've seen them blowing up all over the internet.
But the question is, how do you make one that actually stands out and draws in a crowd?
An example of an excellent signature beverage is one that just can't be replicated with any coffee. If you're using a different coffee, the drink needs to change as well.
US Barista Champion, and the mind behind hundreds of viral signature drinks.
My name is Morgan Eckroth. I've worked in coffee for about 8 years now and do video content creation under the moniker Morgan Drinks Coffee. A really interesting beverage. So it was a clarified coffee milk punch. It did numbers.
Or if you're about sustainability, you could make a signature drink called the Scrap Heap.
That is an excellent name. I will be stealing that.
Please do. Do you think that it can be a bit overwhelming or stressful? Because there's a level of fame that's obviously come with having this many eyeballs on you as well.
Structure and regiment and rules were very important to maintaining a healthy relationship to the audience, but also to being your own boss. I'm here just like everyone else, clock in, serve really good coffee to people, and then clock out. This is going to sound really counterintuitive to, I think, everything that I do. We probably put too much sugar in signature drinks.
Oh my goodness, I am excited. Welcome back. I'm one of your hosts, Rowan Cook. I make coffee on the internet.
And I'm Ben Bicknell. I judge people who make coffee, but only in competitions.
Together we are It's Just Coffee, the podcast for people who know it's never just coffee. Now, what I wanted to talk about is signature drinks are probably one of the most divisive things in the coffee industry right now. Some baristas love the creativity of creating them, and some think that it ruins the integrity of the beans.
We've seen them blowing up, especially all over the internet. You know, there's classics like the Mont Blanc, the cold brew layered with that sweet cream and a little orange zest. Espresso tonics with grapefruit. We've got a little bit of rose lattes, maybe some coffee with lulo juice and a bit of salted pineapple in there.
Sounds like a genius might have come up with that one. Now, some of these are great and some of them are a little strange, but one thing's for sure, the general public absolutely loves them. But the question is, how do you make one that actually stands out and draws in a crowd?
Well, that is why we are joined by none other than Morgan Eckroth, aka Morgan Drinks Coffee. They're the 2022 US Barista Champion and then went on to be the runner-up in the World Barista Championships. They're the genius mind behind hundreds of viral coffee recipes, and they have more than over 8 million followers on social media. Pretty aspirational there. And Morgan is redefining what signature drinks can be.
And today they're going to teach us all about it. Welcome to the pod, Morgan.
Welcome, Morgan. Yay!
Oh my gosh. I am so honored to be here.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to have a quick word from one of our sponsors, Apex Lab. Elevate your coffee experience with Apex Lab mineral concentrates. Apex Lab's precision-engineered formulas, including tonic, jam, and lilac, are designed to enhance the coffee's natural flavors. Not going to change it, it's just going to enhance it. It's going to bring out the vibrant acidity, the rich sweetness, or if you use lilac, it might bring out those delicate floral notes that you've been looking for. Trusted by world-class cafes and even barista champions, Apex Lab helps you unlock your coffee's full potential. Discover more at apexlab.com. Wait, where was that again, Sonam?
The internet.
Oh, okay. Thought I was going to say the website. Thanks.
Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsors at Eco Barista. The reason I sound like this is because they got massages at our stand at Mice, and so I'm getting a massage while recording this message for you. They're the best sponsor of the pod that we could have had. They have the best eco products. This probably sounds really pornographic, but it's not. I'm just getting a massage. They have the best eco-friendly coffee products. They got coffee bags that you can design yourself. They got cups. They got iced coffee cups. They got everything you need. So make sure to support them because they support us. Head to ecobarista.com.au and get 15% off your first purchase when you sign up. Oh, mama, that's good.
I want to ask one thing straight up. What's your coffee order?
Go for it.
Can we just get straight into that?
Oh, wonderful question. Wonderful question. My coffee order is kind of in two parts. My ideal morning, I get either a little cappuccino or maybe a small little signature drink, and then like 6 ounces of black filter coffee. And those two are my dream combo.
Now, the cappuccino, we were talking about this on the pod the other week. In Australia, we put chocolate on the cappuccino, but not in the States.
I think it's lovely. I'm lucky enough to live in Portland, Oregon, and we have a Proud Mary cafe very, very close to where I live. And so that was my first exposure personally to like cocoa powder on a cappuccino, and I love it. I wish we did it here.
There you go. We're getting the hot take in. We were having the debate of whether it should be on it or not. Now, you're everywhere online, but for people who are unaware, could you introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Morgan Eckroth. I'm a coffee professional based out of Portland, Oregon, and I have a couple different roles. I've worked in coffee for about 8 years now, and currently I'm going back to being a competitive barista. I do video content creation under the moniker Morgan Drinks Coffee on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, kind of all the video places. And then I also work on the creative team at Onyx Coffee Lab.
Yeah, and talking about the TikTok kind of content production and other social medias, you've kind of built a huge following there. And I think TikTok was the original platform that really boosted that up. What's been the secret to the success, you think? What's drawn people to that content?
Yeah, so TikTok was the first place. I started creating content just generally back in early 2019, I believe it was. At the time, I was getting my marketing degree. I was working as a barista, and it very much started out as just like really a hobby of ultimately I want to work in creative and marketing, and video seems like a good skill set to have going into that. And so at the time when I started online, especially, like it was a fairly small sphere of people who were doing coffee like content and video work, especially in short form content. I think YouTube had like a longer lifespan at that point, but TikTok and Instagram were kind of still fresh. And so in the beginning, I think it was definitely right place and right time. But over the years, I've really tried to develop what I kind of consider like digital hospitality, where you're taking kind of these principles that we utilize every day in coffee service and like how we treat people and how we communicate things and educate people, and taking them and putting them into like video format. And so for me, figuring out what that means and how I utilize digital hospitality in my content, I think has been kind of the main thing that has both allowed me to do this for as long as I have, and it's also garnered like a really awesome and kind of like shocking number of people around this over the years.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch the transition that you've made there from, I think originally you were doing kind of more skits and kind of set pieces, right? About this is the me in the life of the barista and our experience. And then you've moved more towards kind of that recipe or sharing of kind of different instructional. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. It's been a fun transition of content over the years. Coffee has always been the core of it. But in the last, I think it's been about 2.5 years now since I've really pivoted into more drink making and drink focused content. A lot of that was really birthed out of the fact that I was doing a ton of that behind the scenes, especially for barista competitions during those years, and kind of feeling a need creatively to refresh and do something new. And it was one of those things where I was like, I'm doing this already. Like, let's see if people are kind of interested in it online as well.
I bet the cafes that you were working for at the time that you started doing this, loving having you in their business and kind of bringing the customers in. Do normal cafes get to have people like you in there? Do they keep their eyes out for like who's the gun social media video star?
It was really interesting when I started working at Keeper in Portland when we moved up here a couple years ago. I had already been doing kind of the online thing for a while, and it was one of the things that was really, really important to me when I was interviewing for that job was that I don't want to come into this job with this like attached, online, like I don't want that to be involved in this in any way. That's a very separate part of my life. Like my goal always has been in all my barista work is like, I'm here just like everyone else to like clock in, serve really good coffee to people, like treat people really well, and then clock out. Like it's been an interesting like pathway over the years to kind of like separate out like barista and then also like internet persona, which inevitably just kind of exists over here in this corner.
Now, Morgan, what are you working on at the moment?
Right now, I am continuing with my regularly scheduled video content, but the biggest project that I have been working on for the past year and is kind of going into a production stage now is I have been actually writing a coffee book that is going to be kind of half coffee knowledge and then half signature beverages as well. So it's been a very big process. There's still a long ways to go with it, but I am super excited.
That is so cool.
Yeah, that's so
I can't
cool.
wait to get that. That is amazing.
It's just such a long, publishing moves at such an archaic pace compared to like the internet world where I'm like, it's been in the works for so long and I'm like, there's still so much further to go, but it'll be fun.
Well, this is great because I can just buy one of them and then I'll just do months of content done where I'm just going, making every drink from Morgan's recipe book.
I would have so much fun if you did that. Like genuinely, that would be such a blast.
I'm going to do it. Do you know how easy it is for me not to A, think of making the recipe, B, thinking of the video. I just have to make what's on the page.
Just gotta
You just have to read the words and then do the words.
Yeah, Morgan dropping into your comments, critiquing your techniques, you know.
You did that wrong.
Yeah.
Never ever.
It must be having millions of people watching you. Do you think that it can be a bit overwhelming or stressful sometimes? Because there's a level of fame that's obviously come with having this many eyeballs on you as well.
It's, you go through kind of like waves of it. I think one of the things I think I've done a pretty good job of for myself over the years is like very much treating what I do as work as much as I love it. And I'm like so privileged and lucky to be able to do it as a job. Very, very early on, because I started doing this very seriously during COVID, I realized that like structure and regiment and rules were very important to maintaining kind of a healthy relationship to like the audience, but also to like essentially being your own boss and like running a small business. And so I credit a lot of the structure that I have in treating this as work in making it not feel like the numbers don't feel too scary. It's just kind of like, they're just like facts as, kind of this weird job that exists.
Now, in the cafe scene with creating content and doing that, you were talking about keeping them separate as you do it. Do you have any tips for smaller cafes that are maybe wanting to build their media presence and do that? Because there is a weird balance between asking your baristas to then be the face of your company. Some people don't want to, some do. Is there any general advice that you have for a cafe wanting to build their media presence?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we live in this like awesome time period where creating high quality, I'm just going to use the word content to kind of encompass both photo, video, like whatever have you. The ability to create that is so easy nowadays. Like everything exists like on our phones to do that sort of thing. And I think the most important piece of advice that I give when talking about social media is really digging down to the core message of what you're trying to convey through social media. And so for cafes, like often the ask is like, I want people to come in, and that's like spend money, and that's the obvious answer. But it's like, what emotion do you want them to feel when they're in your cafe? And is that the same emotion that you want them to feel online? And I think a lot of the ways that people are able to kind of like bridge those two worlds of like brick and mortar spaces and online spaces is through telling stories. And so as much as people can, like weaving their own narrative into content, even if it's through a business, is super important. And I think also creating division between what is content and what is real life is really important. You touched on it very briefly. I think something that is becoming more and more a discussion in especially barista circles is I work at a cafe. I got hired as a barista. I am now being expected or asked to be an on-camera personality. And I think that's a weird, like, gray area that now exists. And I think it's very much a case-to-case basis as to what works best. But it's definitely a discussion that needs to be brought up more prominently, I think, especially in hiring processes as cafes are looking to build out their presence.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's really important what you said there about finding what your message is and what you're trying to create. Because when I look back to some of the content you've created, and especially in those early days with those skits, having you just say there, I wanted to create the hospitality experience in my online videos. That's exactly what it is. And especially in a world where there's so much negativity online or twists, your content was almost meditation for people. It's like their experience of walking in, they're greeted by someone, and often it's like the customer being like, is this annoying and the barista being like, no, of course you can do that. Do whatever you want. You can add the sugar. You can do this. So it's really interesting hearing you say that there was this key message of creating a cafe hospitality experience online. And that's exactly what it is. And it is insanely successful. I think some of your ones I saw on YouTube had like, was it 43 million or like 16 million or something, some crazy amount of views.
Something horrifying.
But just something so beautiful and simple of being like treated with care when you come into a cafe. So I think that's a really strong point for cafes. What are you trying to communicate online and stick to that message?
And I think I can expand on that a little bit too. I think there's almost like an equation that I try to do, especially when you start thinking about like pieces of content, especially on the business side. Like you are asking people to do something when you post. Like it's either come in, it is buy this seasonal drink, it is, whatever that ask is, there's an ask coming from you. And I think to bridge that gap and make it feel like an even exchange of content that people want to engage in, I think a really big question people need to ask is like, what are you giving back to the people who are consuming this content? Whether could be educational, it could be entertainment, it could be like, I think emotion is one that I relied on, like that was my answer to that question for a while. But it's like, if I'm asking someone to consume my content, what am I giving them in exchange? And having that answer really can drive really resonating content with people.
We are kindred spirits because I have a thing called the 3 E's that we work with here in the studio, which is educate, entertain, and emote, which is the exact three that you just listed. So
those are the
spirits.
Ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because I think this kind of space that we're talking about, I guess like you're saying, Morgan, is a bit of an emerging space of how coffee interaction with people to the coffee industry, like both in cafes, but now in different channels digitally, what they're expecting. And there's the theories around social contracts, so that you as a consumer have an agreement with or there's an understanding between the buyer and the seller about what you're getting for your change in kind of value. And when that is left lacking or there's friction in that social contract, it kind of really starts falling apart. You don't get repeat customers, they feel dissatisfaction. And it's really fascinating because I think what we're talking about here is a change in the social contract for particular demographics, what they expect out of a cafe experience or what they expect out of interacting with a cafe brand, because now they're interacting with it in person when they go in and get a coffee or a signature drink, but also when they're watching it online and they get that different tone, that different emotion. What do they expect to be getting when they walk in the door? Is it just a cup of coffee and go? Or is it more hospitality? Is it a conversation with their barista? Is it, what is the expectation? What do they feel like they're purchasing? And aligning that expectation with actual delivery is I think pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Always add value. Always add value.
Yeah. And so Morgan, like a lot of people will obviously have known you, this online persona you've created of Morgan Drinks Coffee. And then you kind of took everyone on a bit of a journey with that into the real world for a very niche with your competition around the US Barista Championships, right? And you actually you streamed this live, is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, the entire preparation process for that season, like as it was happening, was shared. All of my recipes, including my signature drink, were shared ahead of time. And then during all rounds of my performance, we did a live stream from the audience. But then technically, to like have a live stream element from stage, we were also live streaming from the stage.
Yeah, it was amazing to see Ashley have the camera on the judges' table, right? That was like, or you were on a tripod. So all the judges were like,
It was like on TikTok, like...
But it's fascinating because as someone who's judged at the WBC for, 14 years, that hasn't ever happened before. And the competition space is a really niche little world. It's kind of behind doors a lot of the time and it's quite complex and detailed. So it must have been pretty amazing to be able to share that journey, break it down in a really transparent way with your audience and with kind of people who are interested.
It was very interesting. When I started doing it at the very beginning. Like I told people I was going back to competing, which is something I'd done like prior to like anything internet wise, but it was the first time I'd really introduced that to the internet world in my audience. And it was a very nerve-wracking thing because there was, I think on my end, like competition is something that has been super important to me and that I like just really care a lot about. And so I had this nervousness of like, I really want you guys to like this too. And I'm going to try my best to like present this in a way where you kind of get it, even though like I don't expect everyone to understand like all the nuance and intricacies. But, you know, my mother, who does not drink coffee, never has, never will, the fact that like she understands what flavor calls are and that they're like how they're scored. I was like, if I can communicate that to her, I'm going to try to get everyone else to that level as well.
I think what you did is probably the biggest thing that's happened to the World Barista Championship from that niche side. And I think that there should be lessons taken from that on their side to try to open it up to the world. No, it is. It's like no one, I've never seen any piece of media put out there about the World Barista Championship that's got as much engagement or people actually caring about it. And I think that's one place where it kind of has been lacking, finding interest outside of just this core niche thing. So I think that there's a lot to be learned from how that story was told. And I also just wanted to touch on, give you, you know, your flowers where they're due. The competing in the World Barista Championship must be one of the most stressful and anxiety-inducing and time-sucking kind of things that you could do. Do you think people understand how much work actually goes into getting that routine ready?
I mean, my obvious answer is no, just because like I remember like just it was such a hard, rewarding, like fantastic period of time. But it's like, you know, explaining to someone that I spent like 10 hours straight one day just like tamping espresso shots, like not even pulling them, just like tamping and then like distribute, like just like these, like the amount of time spent on this like kind of ridiculous minutia that ends up being so important. Like explaining it and saying those words seems rather ridiculous, like outside of most coffee spheres, but it's sports. Like we at that level, you have to kind of treat it and yourself like a high level athlete who can't afford for any like thing to go wrong. And the scary part about barista competitions are there are so many moving pieces and there are so many pieces outside of your direct control, be it like environment, be it like machines, like equipment, like it's a highly specialized competition that you have to be so ready and prepared to be fully on the fly for. It's super unique.
How did it feel when you were there in the finals at the World Barista Championships? Because this had been a really quick movement, right? So how did it feel stepping up on stage as in the world finals for the Barista Championships?
Frankly, I think I blacked most of that day out. It was, you know, it was truly shocking and so incredibly humbling and like, just like I had like a moment there where I was standing on stage after we had finished dialing in. Like I hadn't done my routine yet, but it's like you've done everything you can. You're just going to like perform and serve and then that's it. I was just like standing there and I was like, I like cannot believe that this is real. And I cannot believe that all of these people who have been so ridiculously influential in my own coffee journey as like a very young barista, like I'm like, Ben Putt is right over there and like Aga is over there. And it was like, you know, it's a very like surreal moment, especially coming from someone who at that point, like that was my third year competing like ever. And so it was still so fresh and kind of like raw of learning all these skills that it was just a very stunning moment for sure.
And speaking of influential people, I was there seeing you perform that year in Melbourne and you were walking along with a friend, Lance Hedrick, who was walking around with his shorts on and some flip-flops, walking toes out.
Very Aussie.
Yeah. Now, from your time working with him, is there something about Lance Hedrick that we don't know that we should? Is there any stories that you have?
Oh man, Lance and I have had so many hilarious like moments over like competition prep. Like Lance was my coach for US and Worlds that year. And then we also worked together in 2023. And I was thinking about this question and there's one moment that always sticks in my head with Lance. We were preparing for US and I was out in Arkansas practicing at Onyx and Lance is like a black coffee guy, like filter coffee, espresso, like that whole gambit. And we had spent the day working on like milk drink development and he like we would try a couple sips, but like no one was really finishing anything. And then at one point, it's at the end of the day, it's probably like 6 p.m. and we're about to leave. And I like look over and he's drinking like a 16-ounce cup with a straw. And I was like looking at it, I'm like, is that our freeze distilled milk? And it was I have a photo of it that I'll try to go find, but I was like, oh, it's not the milk thing. It's just keep them separate. I was like, I get it.
But that's intense. Drinking like a whole 16 ounce of freeze distilled milk.
He's like a big coffee baby. He's just got his little bottle there. He's just having a little sip. Needs to relax after a long day.
It was, to this day, my favorite Lance moment was realizing that he was drinking a cup full of freeze distilled milk.
Is Lance the kind of guy who has to have all of the things on his plate separate when he eats them and they can't touch? Is that like the milk to espresso kind of situation going on?
That's a great question that I do not know the answer to, but I will be asking the chat.
Send us a message, Lance. Answer this burning question. So in the World Barista Championships, you have to create a signature beverage. Can you walk us through how you built that out?
So that year, my theme was very much based around celebration of things being reclaimed. I was using a coffee that year, Eugenoides, which is separate species of coffee from Arabica. Very, very sweet, unique coffee that was what's thought to be extinct. And I was also speaking a lot to kind of reclaiming hospitality in the wake of the COVID pandemic. So the two coffees that were going into the drink flavor-wise were the Eugenoides, which is super, super sweet, and then a natural anaerobic Sudan Roumet, which was like very bright, like high acidity, like red and purple fresh fruits. So I had those two as kind of my flavor base, and then I wanted the overarching story of the other ingredients in my beverage to feel like a celebration of the coffees and like a celebratory moment. And so I was talking to the Onyx team and I was kind of reflecting back on my experiences choosing these coffees. And we all had kind of this callback to these moments of aguardiente, which is a Colombian anise-based spirit that is often like drank in celebration. And so I was like, all right, anise, like it would be fun to incorporate that somehow. I was looking really to Colombia for flavor and ingredient inspiration. And so I ended up using lulo, which is a really, really prominent Colombian citrus. It is a lot more tart than like limes or lemons are. It's a very interesting, like high acidity, high tartness. I used that. There was salted pineapple. And then there was also freeze distilled milk in the drink, which kind of tied back to something mentioned earlier in the routine. So it's kind of this full circle beverage that brings together all these elements and ties to the coffees. Carbonated, all of that, because bubbles and carbonation are fun and a really interesting texture call. You know, I gotta say effervescent on stage, which is always like a fun time. And then the entire beverage was topped with like an anise steeped water. One of the other weird things that I did that year in the signature beverage that, you know, for better or for worse, I had a lot of fun was during the service of the signature beverage, one of the really important components was I had asked all the judges to keep their espresso glasses on stage with them, which usually they'd get bussed away. I took all of those espresso glasses right before the signature drink service. I got out a rubber mallet and I smashed all of them as kind of a physical representation of like having something broken like we'd had in hospitality and the loss of this coffee. And then the signature drink was served in these small ceramic glasses that were remade with kintsugi, which is a Japanese method of reforming ceramics with gold. And so it was this like very dramatic, very theater kid-esque experience for everyone. But it was a really, really cool signature drink.
Sounds great.
From the ashes rises the signature drink.
Yeah, a phoenix.
So cool.
This competition stage, literally everyone's nightmare that I think every competitor has like had at one point or another is the sound of hearing glass breaking on stage. And like here I am multiple times a day, like smashing glass on stage. I was
Just
like, what am I?
Triggering all of your fellow competitors.
Yeah.
Speaking of theatre kid, Morgan, I've seen you also doing a lot of like dance and performance and that kind of stuff. If you got a moment, you got to look up the video in the mirror of you like bending backwards with the phone. It's like a full, like the flexibility is insane. That's so cool.
The next stage routine.
I was a theatre kid growing up as well, so I've got it
I'm not surprised at all.
What are you talking about?
There's got to be some.
So we've talked about creating a signature drink for the World Barista Championships. I think it's interesting looking at it coming into a cafe setting. What is your kind of definition of what a signature drink is in the cafe setting? Like, where does it go from just a latte with a pump of vanilla or a mocha into an actual signature drink?
Yeah, that's a great question that will get you a lot of answers. For me personally, I think of signature drinks as beverages that tell a story, and whether that is in a layering of flavors or whether in the presentation, like that's totally up to interpretation. But the beverage has to have some sort of story in it on a very structural level. I also think about signature drinks as beverages that have at least 3 flavor components in them. So, I don't necessarily consider a mocha a signature drink. It's coffee and it's milk, which are a pretty standard common, like that's your base right there. That's where you begin. And then you have chocolate, which is just one addition. If you turned that chocolate sauce or powder perhaps into like a compound syrup, perhaps you add a garnish, then I think we're really getting into the realm of signature drinks, but I think it needs those additional layers built on top of kind of your base profile to be classified as one.
Yeah, that's a great definition. And so when you're going about building a signature drink, is there a difference between approaching it for, say, a World Barista Championship and online or in cafe?
Definitely. Huge range of differences. Barista competitions are really fun and freeing in the sense that you can basically create whatever you want. Like there's obviously kind of the parameters and the rules that limit some things. But as far as ingredients go, you're making a very small set of drinks and you have the flexibility to source whatever you want in a way that is almost impossible for most cafes. At a cafe level, you're not only thinking about like the cost of the drink and what people are willing to pay for it, but it's like what is reasonable to include as ingredients, what is reasonable to include that fits into the rest of your workflow, and also what is sustainable from what you are already utilizing. So is there a way to incorporate byproducts from either like food offerings that you're serving? Is there a way to create ingredients that are multi-use across multiple drinks? Also, bar flow is a huge consideration that is often very limiting for cafes, where it's like we don't have the space to incorporate like a full set of shakers and like, multiple like pieces of equipment. Like we're working with an espresso machine, like steaming pitchers and like maybe a small whisk. And what can we do with that? So working within signature drinks in cafe settings is very much more piecing together a puzzle of pre-existing pieces rather than just looking at a piece of paper and just getting like sketch out your wildest dreams.
I love that idea of using like the different elements from the cafe as well. I saw one cafe that was taking the leftover milk from milk pitchers and the kitchen were taking it and turning it into like a smoked cheese to serve with like one of their breakfast dishes.
I think I saw this too.
Yeah, and I think it's cool when cafes use whatever they have on offering to kind of make it. And I think for a signature drink as well, when you're looking at that, I think your part of saying that it needs to tell a story is super important for me. Like, I feel like it's becoming a real trend-driven thing where people are just like making what they think is trendy. But I think it's going to be much better when you have your own story or own reason to be serving this drink, which kind of leads me into this. Do you think that signature drinks are going to be kind of the future of specialty coffee, or do you think that they're maybe ruining it?
Great question. It's been interesting to see. I think we're in a stage of very rapid growth. I think in even like 5-7 years ago, like signature drinks kind of amounted to like fancy lattes, at least here in the US. Like there wasn't much distinction between cafes. It was very much same format, maybe like a little extra ingredient here or there. Whereas today, especially with the explosion of like cold coffee, which has been like a huge, massive thing, there's an expectation of signature drinks just to be everywhere, like from consumers, especially like younger consumers, like in the Gen Z territory. And I think that has led us to currently being in a period that I will affectionately call slop, where it's like there's just there's kind of been an overcorrection of like signature drink creation right now. And I think there is a happy medium that we will swing back to, where we have primarily signature drinks that are driven by a desire to create interesting textural and flavor experiences and to tell stories and to like create drinks that are unique to individual brands. Whereas right now I do feel like we're in a little bit in the era of kind of chasing what the next thing is. And there's kind of another interesting component to this, where a large reason that we're also seeing such an explosion of just like people just throwing as much against the wall as possible is also we are in such a just tumultuous time, especially in the coffee industry, be it like here in the US with like all the tariffs that are happening, like prices of everything, whether it be paper goods or coffee, is just skyrocketing. And then just like even in the wake of COVID still, like cafes recovering and getting consumers to like reintegrate visiting cafes back into their buying habits. Like you have people like just trying in any way possible. And the really cool thing is having a unique signature beverage menu is a really great way to add unique value and bring people in. But I do feel like we're in the stage where I think the happy spot for that in balance with coffee on its own is like a little bit misbalanced. I think it's going to probably be a couple of years before we hit that center again.
Well, it's where it's hard, right? Because signature drinks have that visual component and component of something new. If you're a cafe and you share on your Instagram, here's a picture of a latte, no one cares. Even just trying to sell like a new coffee bean is hard, because how do you represent a bag of coffee and be like, this tastes like purple fruit and red fruit and it's going to blow your mind, and it's just some beans in a bag, you know?
Well, I always say coffee suffers from the brown liquid problem, where it doesn't matter how delicious it is, it looks like a brown liquid.
Yeah, it's very hard. But it's interesting, isn't it, when you think about something like wine, it looks exactly the same, and suddenly they've managed to create all these different tiers and premium, but it is around the brand around wine, not the thing in the glass.
I think it's a nice balance for specialty coffee, and I think where we could take some lessons from the World Barista Championship stage is creating the drink inspired by the coffee and the seasonal coffee that you're using and what those flavor profiles are. Most signature drinks that we would look at in the world, it doesn't matter what the coffee tastes like. People are just throwing different creams and different things into it, rather than starting with the base core product and going, how can I heighten this and elevate this experience? And to me, that's how you can actually bring people into maybe trying a filter coffee of an experimental coffee or something a little different, because you can tell a story through the signature drink of, I've added these fruits because it's going to lift the natural flavors that are in the coffee and bring people into actually trying the coffee in different formats as well.
And I think what Morgan was mentioning before as well about the reason you're creating the signature drink, what is the intent and who are you as a coffee kind of brand or as a cafe brand? It's like, what's important for you to talk about? Because yes, one inspiration might be the coffee, and as like a coffee, okay, this is where you really want to be directing the conversation. But you could also be a cafe that's really about something else in your community, or, you know, connected with like a community garden, or, you know, have particular foods on the menu and you inspired by that and you want to kind of have a beverage that explores that in a different direction.
Yeah. Or if you're about sustainability, you could make a signature drink called the Scrap Heap, that is all the leftovers from your kitchen and how you turn it into a delicious drink.
That is an excellent name. I will be stealing that.
Please do. You're welcome to it.
Next, World Barista Champion with the Scrap Heap. Morgan, you've created heaps of different recipes. What's the most viral signature drink you've created, and why do you think it took off?
You know, I was thinking about this, and you know, there's been a couple over the years that have had like a lifespan beyond what I imagined them to, but there was one actually recently that did really well, and it was a really interesting beverage. So it was a clarified like coffee milk punch. So in case anyone who is listening isn't familiar with this, milk clarification is a cocktail method that has been around for a very, very long time. And the idea of it is you build your base cocktail that has some sort of acid in it, be it through like citrus juice, or you can use like a proprietary acid blend if you prefer. And then you add typically whole milk to it and intentionally curdle it before straining out the curds. And what happens is you're left with a bottom filtered liquid that is pretty close to transparent. Usually it's lightly tinted in color, but it maintains all the whey from the milk. And so you have something that is super silky. It's a very, very unique texture. And so I did this with coffee and blanking on something. It was like a tropical milk punch. So I think it had pineapple and raspberry and a couple other things. I had this milk punch and then I did a very, very interesting garnish that was, I think, the real driver for what kind of sent it to the places it did. But I had this vision when I was ideating this drink of creating something that looked like a leaf with raindrops on it. And I thought it would just be so stunning to have that sitting on top of this like almost clear amber coffee liquid. And so I took isomalt, which is a product that is, it's a sugar product that you can kind of mold to be different shapes. And I created, it was so painstaking. It was like, this is one of those examples of this is not a cafe beverage. This is very much an internet beverage. But I molded these little isomalt balls into raindrops and then set them atop a mint leaf to cool. And then that raindrop mint leaf then sat on top of the beverage. And it was this color combination of like amber and green and looked very organic. And it did numbers. It was a very, very fun one to share. That's probably been the most viral recently. And that was a high intensity signature beverage.
I can say it looked stunning, looked like raindrops in like a wet forest on the top of the leaves kind of going in.
Yep.
Amazing. Was that part of the series? You've started doing a series to get people to give you like...
That was 2 flavors and a texture, yes.
Yeah. Can you tell people about this series that you're doing? Because I think it's a great way to actually like put yourself out of your comfort zone when trying to think of signature drinks and create something really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the past couple of months, frankly, just because I was hitting a little bit of a creative wall, like I felt like I'd kind of scraped my brain clean and I was like, I just need help here. I asked folks to give me 2 flavors and a texture, and it was my job to make a coffee drink out of them. And there was no rules. I don't care if it's savory, if it's sweet, like it could, the texture that was given for that drink I just described was crunchy. And so these isomalt crystals were very crunchy, and that was my incorporation of that. But I've had people give me super wacky stuff. For that one, it was raspberry, pineapple, and crunchy, and that's what came out of it. I've had ones where someone said like fig, creamy, and forgetting what the last one was, but I ended up doing like a caramelized sous vide cream like float on top of like a fig coffee, and those sorts of just wild combinations that don't seem to have any cohesion at first. Figuring out what the common threads are to like piece them together is such a great mental challenge, but often leads to fantastic beverages.
Those are 2 of the best beverages like I've seen you make, and both of them blew up. So it's obviously a good, experiment to go down. It's so cool.
I think that storytelling, even just hearing you talk through it, kind of really sets off like, oh, I want to try that coffee. I think that draws people in. And is there a recipe or a signature beverage that you've created that you think is hasn't had the recognition it deserves?
Oh gosh, I always probably will come back to like barista signature beverages for that. I think some of the best beverage work that I have done is in my competition beverages, and figuring out how to share those online is such a tricky thing because you don't have the time or the space to really garnish barista beverages in the way you might outside of competition. And so I always get so excited to share these like fantastic drinks that are just like delicious and like it's fluffy and it tastes like pink Starburst and it's like it's all the things. And then I'm like pouring like a brown liquid into a cup and trying to convince people that it's really delicious online. And that's always like, you just have to temper your expectations for how people will respond to it in that space versus where it's meant to be.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, let's kind of take this out into the wild, right? Into the cafe zone. You've worked at multiple cafes as a barista yourself, Tried and True, Keeper, you mentioned, and alongside the team at Onyx. Did all of them already have signature drinks on the menu, or did they add them as you were kind of starting to work with them? And what effect did that have on the businesses?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I haven't actually done a lot of work in the signature drink realm at the cafes I've worked at, but I can speak to kind of the impact over the years that I've seen. Back when I was working at Tried and True Coffee back in 2017, somewhere around then, we had not really any signature beverages. We had the very classic, we had chocolate, we had vanilla. And then I think the two things we had that were closest to a signature beverage is we had a house-made caramel sauce. And then we also did occasional seasonal, the classic pumpkin spice and all that sort of stuff. But that was really the extent of it. When I moved up to Keeper Coffee, we did all of our syrups in-house, which was super fun. And we had a few signature syrups. The most popular at that cafe, and I can almost guarantee to this day it's still the most popular, was a rose cardamom syrup that was done. So it's floral, it's a little bit spiced, it works really well in hot or cold drinks. And then beyond that, there would be occasional signature beverages, which would often be layered drinks, interesting infused cold foams. And so that was my first experience really working with cafe signature drinks was there. And they went crazy. I would say, we sold more rose cardamom lattes in a day than we probably did cups of filter coffee. It was, and part of it is the market that we were serving. That was kind of the expectation. And then at Onyx, we have a very, very intense signature beverage program every year. The menu rotates pretty often with the seasons, and we have a fantastic head of drink development, Vanessa, who does all of it. And usually they are highly themed. All of these menus are. There will often usually be multiple drink formats. So there'll be, every year there's a seasonal latte, there's a seasonal cortado, there's a seasonal ice drink. You hit kind of all the different beverage types. And those menus are incredibly popular. There's definitely more of an even split between the signature beverage consumers and the filter coffee consumers at Onyx. But those menus are still really, really important.
Yeah, I always see it as such a great way to try to get your cafe out there, because it's a lot easier to talk about the signature drinks, get new people in to test it out, and just develop that kind. And also, charge $12 rather than $5 for the coffee or whatever. Because for whatever reason, when it looks that pretty, people are willing to pay a bit more money and that kind of thing. And I don't know about in the States, it sounds
the emotional charge.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying all the prices are up there. But in Australia, it's cafes are struggling. Even if you're really popular, you're struggling. And people don't want to pay extra for the coffee either when they're in there. So we can't raise the prices, but we need to get people coming in the doors. So signature drinks to me feels like a nice hack at the moment for the coffee industry to try to give themselves a bit of a name and maybe charge a bit more for a product.
It's definitely, signature beverages are kind of that buffer to allow you security in your coffee program is how I kind of view it, where it's you make all the money over here, but it allows you to invest in this segment over here.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, speaking of Tried and True Coffee, I don't want to bring up anything here and some bad memories, but you were sprayed with bear mace while working a shift. What happened?
I was. This is true. This was back. This is the story I tell during Two Truths and a Lie. I pull this one out occasionally. This happened back in late spring to summer of 2020. So it was very, very early in the pandemic. We were dealing with here in the US, and I from what I understand, it was even more intense in Australia, where we had our regulations for what was allowed and what wasn't was changing every day. Our cafe at the time made the choice that we weren't going to accept cash for the time being. We were going to do just kind of tap to pay, card only. So we weren't handling it. At the time, we had protocol that required us to wash our hands every time we touched cash. And it was just there was so many moving pieces. But with that being said, if someone didn't have a card, their coffee was just free. It was no questions asked. It's not your fault for having a tender that we are not accepting right now. So with that context, we had someone come in who didn't have cash, and we were we don't take cash right now. But before we could even get out that we were just going to give him his drip coffee, he got super irate and stormed out. And we were that's that. That's unfortunate, but that's how that situation goes. And then about probably like 15 minutes later, he comes back by the front of the shop. It's just myself and my coworker in there. Thankfully, we were alone. It was a very slow Sunday morning. And it's this really, really tiny shop that only has like one entrance and exit. And the guy like kind of leans in the door and like sprays something. And we can't see what it is immediately. It's like not instantly clear. So I like automatically just like walk around the corner of the counter and just walk into this cloud of bear mace. And it was... It was the most unique sensory experience I've ever had, I think is the nicest way to put it. But it immediately got like sucked into the ventilation system and like just the entire shop it just permeated everywhere. And so it like sucked. We had to call the police. I am still to this day, I don't think with our very slow and clunky and misaligned justice system, I don't think that case has ever fully like been finished. And so I still once in a while get calls from like the Benton County Courthouse being like, are you able to show up? And I'm like, no, I live so far away now. And like, I don't want to be involved in this anymore. But it was a fascinating little moment that happened. It just was like COVID plus that. And I was like, what am I doing? Maybe I'll go do something else.
What are we doing? Yeah. I love that you described it as a sensory experience. So do you think that at your next barista competition, that might be part of the sensory experience? Maybe like a spiced, chili,
so really agitate
drink.
the sinuses and
spray the judges with bear mace.
I could call it effervescent and be like, and this is a 6, like, just trust me.
Yeah, and then you got the beautiful teardrops coming down that adds like a saline, salty solution.
It adds a saline component for salinity, the tears of the judges.
Not to dive into it too much, but what is the feel? Can you try to describe what that feeling is like of being?
Yeah, totally. My brain, I'm always thinking in terms of like sensory experiences and how to break those down. So I'm like, I could do this. So very, very like peppery, like just like, first of all, it doesn't even like hurt instantly, but your eyes just start crying. Like you don't even know why, but everything is tearing up, like your nose is dripping. And then as you inhale it, you start to be able to feel it like in your lungs and in your throat. And that's when it starts to like sting and hurt. And the worst part of it is that it lasts like for a super long time. It takes forever to get it out of your system. And so I was just kind of like breathing bear mace for the next 2 days. Thankfully it wasn't nearly as bad as if I had taken it directly to the face. That would have been so much worse. But even walking directly into like a fresh cloud of it was like, it just kind of like attacks this section of your body and just like lingers there for a super long time.
We've got snakes, we've got spiders down here. Yes, it's true, but we do not have bears, and so therefore no bear mace. Baristas in Australia, you're safe from that.
But can I just take a moment to give a shout out to the baristas and hospitality people everywhere of the crap that they have to put up with and the things that they go through. Like, you should not ever have to be in a situation where you're walking through a cloud of bear mace. Like, what a ridiculous statement to be made. And like the abuse that is hurled at servers is not okay. These are people who are often working for not that much money, trying to make your day a little bit better and serve you something to get you through. Give them the respect that they deserve.
Yeah. Amen to that. And on the other side of this, that person was about to get a free coffee if they just had to like put the freaking
this was
bear
over a
away.
$3 filter, to be entirely clear.
Oh my lordy. Crazy. Well, hopefully that never happens to anyone ever again. But moving through to cafes and their signature drinks. Okay, so we've got signature drinks on the menu is kind of a new thing down in Australia, relatively speaking. I think like some of our audience around the world, especially in like Southeast Asia, the signature drink game in cafes is crazy, blowing up. It's and super strong and super normalized.
If you go to like a KFC, they have like a 20-page list of signature drinks.
Yeah. And
sounds like a dream.
Yeah. They need your help. But so if you're a cafe that doesn't have a signature drink on your menu at the moment, but you're thinking, look, I want to explore this. I want to maybe try starting to implement this. Do you have some top tips that you can give them for the skills or the approach to start doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I'll back it up a little bit. I think when you are a cafe, the first thing you need to think about are some of those more mechanical bits and pieces of workflow wise, what are we actually capable of making? So Can we make cold signature drinks? Can we do hot ones? Are we restricting ourselves to the latte format? Or do we feel like we can venture out into maybe some more exploratory layering or what have you? Like, workflow has to be the first decision. I think also another very important decision is what are my customers in my market willing to pay for this drink? Because that's going to trickle down into like every following ingredient decision. And then the other thing that I think is really important to take into consideration, we talked a little bit about it earlier, is the sustainability aspect of what ingredients am I able to use from a cost perspective, but also from a sustainability perspective of incorporating these ingredients into other things in the cafe, in pulling ingredients from byproducts that we already have. Like, how can we keep this process as insular as possible? Those are kind of like the boring things to kind of get out of the way. And I think the second thing that comes into play after those components are figured out are, how do you want to approach flavor? I think there's the most accessible route, which is I think where most people should and do start, which is thinking about flavor seasonally. So we think about like signature beverage menus or drinks in kind of like 3-month chunks of like spring, summer, winter, fall. And when you start thinking that way, it becomes easy to be like fall, which we are approaching right now. You know, here in the US, it's like pumpkin spice season. Like that's the very obvious flavor choice. But if you're looking to move beyond that, it's like, how can you take the recognizability of something like a pumpkin spice latte, which is really just baking spices like cinnamon, cardamom, like cloves, you know, it's those flavors. How can you take them and put your own twist on them? So maybe you're not using pumpkin as your base. Maybe you make a syrup utilizing some other type of squash that, you know, in practice is going to have a similar profile, but gives you a different story element to convey to your customers, gives you something that is slightly different than what everyone else is serving. I think kind of that strategy of taking what we already know works and adapting it to what fits you best is like the most approachable way to begin developing signature beverages, especially in cafes. It can get so crazy off of that, but just the simple, here's what works. We're going to use this format and we're going to adjust it slightly is like, it's possible to do on your own without like a large scale, like set of resources or consultants.
Right. And so for a barista who is really skilled at coffee, what are your top 2 or 3 skills that you would recommend a barista needs to develop great signature drinks?
I think the ability to look, I don't know if this is necessarily a skill, but the number one thing I recommend for baristas is look beyond coffee. Like, so much of my own inspiration in drink making does not come from the coffee world. It primarily comes from mixology and cocktails, like looking at techniques that are being utilized there, because like they've got signature drinks fully figured out, figuring out what syrup making or texture creating techniques they use that can be applied to coffee is often a really, really great like base of knowledge to gain. I think another skill set is learning how to develop flavor pairings and thinking about what I like to call like primary flavors and then their auxiliary flavors that are supportive of that primary flavor. Going back to what we were talking about with signature drinks, of them telling a story and being multiple components, like you're looking to create balance in a drink. It can't all just be sweet. It can't all just be acid. So figuring out how to pick what your primary flavor is and then figuring out what's the sweet element? What is the brightening or acidic element? What is the aromatic element? And then tying that together in the visual. Learning that balance it takes a long time. It's a lot of work, but it is the core of beverage making.
And another great tip is to watch Morgan videos, because you'll learn all about making.
I do post a lot of recipes. So I always tell people, I'm like, anything that I have shared out there, like it's there for you to use. Like take those recipes, run with them, like do whatever you need to with them.
But even the different syrups that you're making, like there's recently been like, is it the oleosaccharides or there's the chungs, like the Korean chung, like the macerating fruit basically to make a syrup with just sugar and fruit. So TikTok is actually like, I feel like the cooking game, not just coffee, but cooking in general or culinary stuff has just gone off in the last like 5 years, because there's so much technique that is being shared openly with just like home chefs and home baristas and that we're making better stuff than ever.
I feel like we're going to need to do another episode with you, Morgan, where we actually are all in the same studio and we're drinking some creations, because this is just making me very thirsty.
So fun.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll do it over in Host. We'll get together. We'll go to Milan together. And
we'll find some cool little Italian cocktail bar and just take it over.
The final thing I wanted to touch on, and we briefly mentioned it earlier, is just what do we think the future of signature drinks in specialty coffee is going to look like? Or even more importantly, what should it look like? And what do we think is going to be the most beneficial? You did mention earlier the idea that we're maybe going to come full circle, but maybe we could elaborate on that a bit more.
I think for me, I'll use a different phrase of words. What I hope it looks like in the future is what really excites me right now in the world of coffee signature beverages. And I think we're starting to see more, but it definitely exists in a more like luxury, kind of like higher echelon category, is these like slower service, like omakase style, like coffee pairings, like seeing like delicious, beautiful, like filter coffee featured next to an incredibly intentional, like equally cared for signature beverage, and experiencing those side by side. That's where I get really, really excited about signature beverages. I think there's a couple spots that are doing that right now. I think about like Mameya in Japan. I think about Cocoon. There's also Now and Then over here in Nashville, Tennessee, these are very slow, hospitality-driven coffee services, but they take care of the coffee and they take care of the beverages in a way that I think is very reverent of both of them, both as coffee as an ingredient and on its own. And that's the direction that I want signature beverages to go. Not in a direction of like overconsumption and like kind of this like gluttony of ingredients, but just things that are cared for and served with intention.
Yes, that is it.
I'm into that future.
And that's how you can celebrate specialty coffee, right? Because if I have a omakase style where I'm still getting a signature drink that's maybe a little more extravagant or exciting, I can still tell the story of the coffee from bean through to cup in a very succinct way without it just becoming lost in a signature drink.
Yeah. And I guess, Morgan, I'd like to throw back to you is, what's your take on where the coffee gets lost in this process? Because we have a really strong focus on that in specialty of the flavors. Tell us, where does a signature drink go wrong where it loses the coffee?
I think a signature, we said it earlier, and I'm glad we're coming back to this because I had kind of like mentally marked it in the beginning. We were talking a little bit earlier about how there are these signature beverages where you could just like toss any coffee into them and they would functionally be the same. I think that's like where there starts to be this gap. Like I think about coffee as an ingredient quite a bit, in the sense that I'm thinking about its flavor profile, because we all know coffee tastes so wildly different. I'm thinking about its method that it's prepared under. So how am I brewing it? What is the form of coffee? And I'm taking those into consideration alongside every other ingredient. And I think the kind of shining example of an excellent signature beverage is one that just can't be replicated with any coffee. Like, it's built for a specific coffee. And if you're using a different coffee, the drink needs to change as well.
Yeah. I think in the World Barista Championships signature beverage category is a really great framework to look at, and to maybe even, if you're wanting to explore how to think about flavor, because it really amplifies the idea of, when you add ingredients to a coffee, are you doing it to create a contrasting flavor profile, so new flavors, something that will amplify existing flavors or complement them in a different way? And so it's really looking at like, what's the direction you're taking the existing flavor?
And something cool I've seen you do, Morgan, is just like the idea of tasting as you go and like add a little bit, like keep going. Because a lot of the time it's like, it's just balance, right? It's like these things can go together, but sometimes it's just too heavy handed. So it's like add a little bit, stir it in. Okay, we're getting there. We're slowly building this flavor profile that we're looking for.
And it's the most common mistake that competitors make at the barista competitions, is when they're creating a signature drink, just add too much of the ingredients and you just kind of lose the subtleties of the coffee.
Yeah.
I think the funniest note I ever got on a score sheet in relation to a signature beverage is it said too transformative. I had to like sit on that for a second, because I was like, but I transformed it. But there was like an element of I had transformed it so far past like what that coffee was, what they knew it was and what they had tasted it as, that it had become kind of lost in the jumble of what was ultimately a delicious drink. But did it represent this coffee anymore?
It's also a confusing word. Transformative feels like such a positive word that to receive it in that way is too transformative.
Again, it's my most favorite and also most thought about note on a score sheet.
Well, if the person who gave you that note is listening right now, you've still
I love you and I'm sorry.
Now, it's about to get hot in here, almost like a bit spicy, like maybe some bear mace has just been sprayed in the...
We're about to have a sensory experience.
We're about to have a sensory experience because it's time for an extra hot take with 2 sugars. Now, is that music coming through in your ears on that side? We're doing remote
here. It is.
Here.
I did not realize you had a soundboard at first, and this is my favorite thing.
Yeah. Producer Liam has got it all going on. He's also a musician, so we get all types of little riffs.
We've got all the bits.
Now, we're doing some extra hot takes. Seeing as you're the guest, Morgan, I'll give you the floor, and please let us know what your hot take on the coffee industry is, or signature drinks, whatever you've got lined up for us.
Oh gosh, this is the part I was most nervous about because I feel like I am a person perpetually filled with lukewarm takes that are never too spicy. Oh gosh. This is going to sound really counterintuitive to, I think, everything that I do. But going back to this theme of balance in the cup, like especially when we're talking about signature beverages, just in general, like I think we drink too much sugar. Like that's I love signature beverages, but I think we drink too much sugar, especially in like the US signature beverage scene. Like that's my current like fight is trying to figure out how to dial all of that back.
What should be there instead of sugar?
Coffee.
More coffee, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think where it's
more coffee.
scary,
I love acidity. I'm like, just put more acid in that. Like it needs balance.
Absolutely. You got the Acid King, our producer over here, is just like layers it on. But I think the hard thing is, especially if we're going outside of specialty into more of like a Starbucks landscape of looking at signature drinks, and that is not knowing how much, or like people not understanding how much sugar is in like some of these drinks. Like I think I was reading that some of the like larger grande sizes at Starbucks, you're getting up to like 60 grams of sugar in like one single drink, and it's just like insane.
Well, the tricky thing is too is like your taste buds adapt to it. Like that's you lose kind of your ability to like measure it on your palate as much. And so that's the thing of like, how do we like slowly like I love sugar. To be very clear, I love sweet things. I've got like a major sweet tooth. But it's like, how do we figure out how to like dial this back down to a range that is like balanced and showcasing all the elements when sugar is such a delicious thing? And it's very easy to just put a lot of it in something and say, this is a delicious thing.
When I lived in the States, I feel like there was like a few things where there's like, take a regular food and then add something extra to it. Like you've got pizza, and then it's like, you know what? Now I've got to dip this pizza in ranch. And where the problem is once I've dipped the pizza in ranch, I'm like, it doesn't need this. And then I eat it and I'm like, now I do need to dip it in the ranch.
You're like, but
it's
there. Good.
But it's good. But do I need to be doing this? And then once you go back to just biting it without the ranch, you're like, you know what? Could use a little ranch.
This is a tale of moderation here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think it's also part of the conversation here about how young the signature beverage space is in the coffee world, right? Is that customers are walking up and expecting, if it's something that looks like that, it's going to be a sweet drink. And so if you're going to do something different, you need to really be to that expectation.
And
see, and I feel like even that was kind of a lukewarm take. I feel like I have not fully served like a hot, spicy take to you all, but
it's great.
I fear that that's as much as it is.
No, that is a perfect take. And Morgan, I think you're such a kind person with a nice persona that I think coming out with like a really hot, aggressive take would be very, very out of character.
Very off-brand.
The internet's just
Morgan
like
gets angry.
You know what makes me really mad? When my coffee is like a little not filled to the top. That's Morgan with a lukewarm take. You should start that. You should start
I'm gonna commission Liam to make that jingle for me.
Yeah.
Do it.
That's your new series. You were saying that you were hitting a bit of a mental block with this. You could just start doing Morgan's lukewarm takes. Just on anything in life. Just
I love
mild
that.
things. Ben, Hit us with a spicy take, brother.
All right, my hot take is that if you are creating signature drinks focused on results on Instagram, you are on the road to ruin.
Oh,
I'll clap for that one. That's a good one right there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to clap for that.
Oh, fine. Okay.
Because I think that's exactly what you need to do. And I think you need to find the balance between visual and actually making a good story for the drink. I think there needs to be a balance because unfortunately, social media is going to be the reason of why it's shared and why it's talked about.
Look, I agree with you. It's the road in, it's the entrance. It kind of captures the attention far and wide. And even the story side of it, I agree with. However, it's what is in the cup that I'm talking about here. Because if you are focused on those big monstrosity kind of beverages that get all of the likes and the shares on social media, but then you walk in and it's like an absolute mess to drink and you can't taste anything. And to Morgan's point, probably is about a bucket of sugar kind of coming out there. It's a short-term win. Like you're going to get people in the door, they're going to take a photo and they will never be your customers again.
You know, I think the only thing we have here is just an order of operations issue. I think you are totally right of the core development has to be not for social media, it has to be for the drinking experience. I think the social media element is important, but comes in the very final refining stage.
How do I make this Instagrammable?
Afterwards. It has to be, first of all, it has to be delicious.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, don't go chasing the vanity metrics. Don't be like, oh, look how many likes I got. But then who are your regular customers that actually want to buy and drink this beverage again and again?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to come in with a bit of a hot take.
Go for it.
Enough cold foam. It's everywhere. It's overrated. A signature drink isn't a signature drink just because you put a layer of cream on the top here. Like that's all that people are doing is it's a regular coffee with a bit of a cream. They're like, that's a signature drink. You need to be more creative. You need to think about your flavor profiles and you need to highlight the coffee. Granted, I'm to blame here as well. I put plenty of cold foams on a coffee, but there's
we
also
are our own greatest enemies.
Yeah. Look at you two.
But we are caught in a world of what we want to do and then what the internet likes. And it's a hard balance of trying to do that. You get a couple flops and you're like, all right, I'll just throw a cold foam on something. It's an easy...
Twist and call it good.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just... Look, obviously, I think as we talked about, a cold foam can work and play its part where needed. But I feel like I don't think I've seen a signature drink from a cafe, LA and New York, kings of all these signature drinks. I don't think I've seen one that doesn't have a cream cold foam on the top of it.
Yeah.
Well,
it's one of those like tufted, like it's like so batchable and like it's like, here's the thing. We have the rebranding of whipped cream into cold foam is like truly one of the most exceptional like marketing experiences that I've had in the last couple of years where I'm like, guys, I love whipped cream. We are just putting soft whipped cream on everything.
This is genius. I never thought about it like that. It's literally because it came out of vogue. You couldn't ask for whipped cream on your coffee. It's like, that's a bit, I don't want anyone seeing me. But cold foam.
A cloud top even.
Oh, a cloud top. That's sophisticated.
Okay.
What was that you were saying, Ben, that cold foam is just floppy whipped cream? Such a visceral way. Talking about sensory experiences. Floppy whipped cream.
I'm pretty sure I was just rephrasing what Morgan said, you know.
No, please, you can have that one. That's totally yours.
Yeah.
I'm going to soundbite you on that one.
I'm going to get you a t-shirt printed that just says floppy whipped cream. Now, Morgan, you had your fantastic lukewarm take, and I think we're going to move into a segment here that maybe is more in your kind and generous world of who you are as a person. We want to give you a little moment to do an industry shout out. In the coffee industry, there are a lot of people that are kind of behind the scenes who work hard for the benefit of the industry. Is there anyone that you think could use a little bit of a shining light on them that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I kind of want to give like a group shout out here. We have something really cool that is going to be happening here in the US called Level Up. And it's like a barista boot camp that is it's like a 2.5 weekend event. I'm going to be like speaking and teaching at it, but the organizers of this event, Rachel Apple and Ivana Chan, and just the entire crew, they have put so much stinking work into making this into a resource that is going to be so fantastic for working baristas. Like this is built for working baristas who are looking to take their career to the next level, people that don't have access to like expert knowledge and seminars and courses. And I am just like so proud of what they're doing and also cannot wait to see it come into fruition. So I just want to give like a huge like to all that behind the scenes hard work that's happening right now, like shout out to them.
So cool. Yeah, I love that you've mentioned this because I've been following this event kind of emerge from On Fire. And my co-founder at Open Floor Coffee, my business is Sandra Lufborough, who is also part of the event. And it just looks like it's going to be such a fun session.
Yeah, they're doing good work. It's one of those things that I'm like, I wish like I had that as a baby barista, and I am so excited for the baby baristas that get to experience it this year.
Cool. Well, changing direction one last time here is we are here speaking to an audience all around the world of industry professionals, and we're trying to bring them new ways of thinking about what they do and what we're all building together with specialty coffee. If you had one thing that you could ask of them, one ask for our audience to stop doing, to do more of, to be thinking about as they leave this podcast, what would it be?
I think this is a very human thing and not necessarily a coffee thing, but I think what has come to me the most, especially in the past like couple of years, is like we just all need to be nicer to each other. I think especially as a lot of us operate in kind of the vacuum of social media where it's a very loud space and it's like there just isn't like the ability to always share nuance or tone or like all of these things that we are able to do in person is like just be nice to each other. Like it's the most human and the best thing we can do to each other to lift each other up.
And I think you really put that out in the content that you're making online. I, sometimes look at the comment sections of your videos and your positivity then breeds positivity in the comments. I wish I had some of that in my comment section. Just open that up. And,
you got to kill him with kindness.
Some guy, whatever. About get out of here. This guy. Go Barista Championship, you wiener. As we talk about positivity. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's great because we are in hospitality and we give a lot to other people, but it's really important that I think we share that with each other as well and kind of lift each other up because we are all part of this community. And if we don't look after ourselves, we're not going to be able to have this longevity looking after our customers.
Well, how about this? Ben, I think you're beautiful. I think you're smart. I think you're well-spoken. I think the knowledge and expertise that you bring to this podcast is truly remarkable. And I'm in awe of everything that you do in the coffee industry and as a father and as a friend.
Oh, I will take that to heart. Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
This is a beautiful moment. We have like a little tear. We're like, this is so nice.
I don't know what to say. Yeah, there we
go. Wow.
Speaking of nice things to say, Morgan, you are truly one of the biggest names in the industry, but not only that, someone who is lifting it up, doing amazing things. For you to take out the time to chat with us today is so generous and so kind. I want to thank you for coming by. And for anyone, where can they find you? Where should they go? You've obviously got the different comp coming up that you're going to be teaching at, but what else? Where else can they find you?
Yeah, I am Morgan Drinks Coffee most places, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, morgandrinkscoffee.com. I also write a small newsletter called Coffee for Here on Substack if you want to find me there as well.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining us for this chat today. It's been really fun to kind of unpack it and really encouraging to go and kind of explore some new flavors. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much. This was truly a blast.
And Morgan, you actually sent Ben a text message before the pod. And Ben, I wanted you to read out what that text message said.
More spicy chili in signature drink foam.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, you weren't supposed to. That was supposed to just be between us. Like that wasn't supposed to be like. We can like pineapple that and.
Yeah, exactly.
See you later.
Cheers.